So I'm sitting here and I'm reading some posts on a pretty famous person who seemed like they have it all together, or somewhat. And to find out that this person is very sad, feel very hopeless, feel a little bit like, no, actually her posts look like, they all look like she don't want to even make it. And our post was about how it seems like God has forgotten her. Now, I don't know what the content of it is. I don't know if she feels like God has forgotten her because of whatever, right? We don't know. We don't know what I want to say. We don't know what her, like, the weight of that message, of those messages, of her saying, it seems like God has forgotten about her. It's better for her to go home, to die rather than live on earth. Where is the weight of that message coming from? What is she measuring that kind of pressure against? And I sat there and I was reading and I was thinking to myself, I said, it's crazy because we live by the standards of this world, right? We usually put put our self-worth and everything that we believe that we're about in the measure of this world's standard. If God if God wants us to live a certain kind of way, if he wants us to be teachers, if he wants us to be comedians, if he wants us to be eunuchs, if he wants us to be single, or whatever it is that he wants us to be, have we ever taken the time long enough to ask God, what do you want us to be, rather than us praying for us to be something that God never intended us to be? But then we put the weight on God to say, hey, give me this or give me that based on what the world thinks that we are supposed to be. What are we measuring our worth in? What are we measuring what we are worth in? What is it that God wants us to be? Huh? It hurts so much to see how many of our young brothers and sisters begin to give up on life because the measure of their lives are not the measure of their lives don't seem to be adding up to what the world standard is. But that's where the mistake comes in. We don't measure up the standard of our lives, or the weight of our lives, or the worth of our lives based on what God wants. We measure it up based on what the world thinks, and then we say, God, you're not giving us what we want. But how do you know that's what God wants? He said he gives us the desires of our hearts. That means that he puts the desire in our hearts and then gives that to us, right? So how do we know what God wants for us to desire if we don't seek him for what we desire, rather than putting in place a substitute of what we think that we're supposed to have? I want to encourage somebody today to rethink the purpose, rethink the course of their lives, rethink where we think we're supposed to be, and just go before God and ask him, Lord, where do you need me to be? Where do you need me to be? And that's where I'll go. Stop measuring your life based on what other people, what society, what the world puts in front of you, and saying this is what life is supposed to look like. The world knows nothing. Their ignorance, their lack of wisdom, they know nothing. Their standard is not your standard. The world's standard, the world's measure should never be what you use to measure your life. Christ's life was measured by what his Father wanted for him, not what the world told him that he needed to be. He stepped up to kings and went before them and defended what he was supposed to be, because he knew for sure. He stood flat-footed, sure-footed, knowing what he was supposed to be, because he knew the call from his Father on his life. So I challenge you today to remove Remove the measure, remove the weight of the world from your sight. Go before God, get His definition of your life, and then write that definition out and live it.